What up, YouTube? It's going down. What's up? Chillin'.
Court, good news, blocks the Biden COVID rules for businesses. So that means that businesses will not be mandated to have their employees show vaccination proof. Thank God. Article goes on to say the Supreme Court on Thursday, which today stopped the Biden administration from implementing vaccine or test mandates on large businesses, but it did allow a vaccine mandate for most healthcare workers. So not a complete win, ladies and gentlemen. I know that most people feel like hospital healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, LPNs, medical assistants, etc., because they work in the health industry, that they should have to. Now, there are mandates that have been in the past where that healthcare workers have had to be vaccinated. You can also apply this to military, right? Military, depending on if they've gone into a zone, they've had to have vaccines, some that were experimental vaccines and some that were tested, alleged, quote-unquote, proven vaccines. Well, that's a whole nother conversation. What it's saying here is in a 6-3 ruling, court's conservative majority knocked it down. Boom, boy. White House's proposal, all private businesses of 100 employees or more needed to require vaccinations for COVID-19, subjection to unvaccinated workers to regular testing. The rule had been challenged by Republican-controlled states and pro-business groups. But it says OSHA, which is Occupational Safety and Health Administration. OSHA has never before imposed such a mandate, nor has Congress. Indeed, although Congress has enacted significant legislation addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, it has declined to enact any measure similar to what OSHA promulgated here, wrote the court's 6 justices in the unsigned opinion. The rule had been a cornerstone of President Biden's efforts to rein in the coronavirus by applying pressure to people who remain unvaccinated. In a statement issued following the ruling, Biden called on individual states and businesses to issue their own safety mandates. That I am disappointed in the Supreme Court. Wah, big baby whining, big butthead. Biden, but he was heavy. I am disappointed in the Supreme Court that they has chosen to block the common sense, life-saving requirements for employees at large businesses that were grounded squarely in both science and the law. Spoken like a person who is truly reading a script. Biden said that, also adding, the court has ruled that my administration cannot use the authority granted to it by the Congress to require this measure, but that does not stop me from using my voice as a butthead president to advocate the employers to do the right thing to protect Americans' health and economy, and jab yourself with an mRNA vaccine that is really been around for not too long and not really proven. Says in November, OSHA estimated that the policy would prevent 250,000 people from being hospitalized due to 22 million additional Americans receiving the vaccine, blah, blah, blah. In a 5-4 ruling also issued today, the court's 3 liberals were joined by Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh in allowing a vaccine mandate to most healthcare workers to stand. This is the ruling. Comes amid another COVID-19 surge in the United States, fueled by the hyper-transmassive Omicron variant. According to tracking from the New York Times, it says there has been an increase of 159% in cases, allegedly. Okay, let's point that out. All right. Who knows who's got the right numbers or what? But it says 82% in hospitalizations and 51% in deaths over the last 14 days. One thing I want to point out is it's not really talking about the ratio of people who are vaxxed and unvaxxed, of people who have contracted this variant or a whatever level of sickness. It's not saying here's the number of people who have been vaxxed and haven't, and here's who is still contracting a virus. We have heard stories about people who are unvaxxed, but we're also hearing stories about people who are vaxxed and still getting sick. So that's why the government, I've heard news reports recent weeks that are saying, well, maybe you need to get a third booster or a fourth booster. And they're talking about now, well, maybe you need to get jabbed every 6 months, maybe get a booster every year. Right? Maybe this is we hear this quote, that we hear over and over again. Oh, the new normal. So that's what it seems to be. But whatever it is, ladies and gents, this is from Yahoo. Obviously, each outlet, whether they're left or they're right, or they're liberal or independent, each outlet is going to have somewhat of a motive and a level of bias in their reporting, right? But nonetheless, they still have to report still essentially what's happening, right? The truth of what's actually going on in this circumstance is the Supreme Court shot it down, and so employers are not going to be forced to mandate vaccination proof to their employees, but they are saying that healthcare workers will still have to do that. So my personal opinion, I don't agree with still even the fact of even healthcare workers. I know that some people would disagree with me because they'll say, well, they work in healthcare, so they should be vaccinated against everything. I don't know. Is that freedom? And somebody can say, well, if you're choosing to do that as a living, and you're a doctor or a nurse, then people should expect that. I don't know. I don't feel that way. In this particular case, I feel like it's very important for people to keep in perspective that regardless of whatever industry, even including the health industry, people should still have the choice. Okay? This is if this was, for example, there's a difference between something being contagious and someone's 6 feet close to you and they cough or sneeze. Yeah, sure, you can get sick. Yeah, that goes without saying with just about anything, depending on a person's immune system response. Right? What I am saying is it's a whole nother level for something to be airborne. Okay? Something being airborne. If something was actually airborne, like, have you ever seen that movie? Like a perfect example would be, have you guys ever seen those Hollywood movies? There's a couple that are coming to my mind. One is called Outbreak. You guys ever seen the movie Outbreak? Okay. You ever seen it? If you've never seen it, check it out. I'm sure you can stream it or rent it, whatever, Another one is called Contagion. I don't know if you guys ever seen that. So a couple movies, just a heads up, Contagion and Outbreak, they show an example of something that's actually airborne, and it spreads quite quickly. So in 2 years, if this was something that was airborne, okay, and look at all the air travel we have nowadays, half of the world would be dead, right? It would be, let me point out another movie, Brad Pitt, 12 Monkeys. Oh, God. How can we forget 12 Monkeys? So that's another one, right? I mean, if it was really airborne, right? So I'm not saying that there's not something going around, because obviously there is something going around. I don't know what to make of it. I don't have all the answers, ladies and gentlemen. I don't. I have a lot of answers. I just don't have all the answers. But when it comes to certain topics, I know a lot about a lot. In this particular case, I think all of us are kind of scrambling and trying to figure out what's what. So as the saga continues, we shall see. As another day passes, we shall keep posted on info and continue to share that information so that all of us kind of have as much up-to-date info as we can, and try to make sense of this strange dystopian time frame in history that we're living in. If you understand what I'm saying and you can appreciate it, please like and share. Get it out there. Like and share the video just to give people a perspective where someone like myself in a video like this can kind of talk somebody through it and say, hey, I don't really know all the answers. I'm not really sure. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. But someone that's kind of looking at the numbers and looking at common sense and looking at the perspective in a span of, it's January now. In March, it'll be approximately officially 2 years since they announced the surge of COVID-19 in the United States during the Trump administration. So back in 2020, and here we are, January 2022. So for those of you that are watching this video now and those of you watching this in the future, just keep in mind that us in this generation, we're all trying to figure it out. So for future generations watching this video, please don't judge us too harshly, because we're not perfect, but we are trying to figure it out. And as civilians, citizens, we're trying to figure out where we stand, and at the same time exercise and embrace our constitutionally protected right, and still protect our civil liberties. Right? Because at the same time, it's one thing to protect the public, but it's another thing to still protect our civil liberties. It's kind of like the difference between church and state, right? There's still a line there that can't be crossed, and nowadays that line, whatever it is, for almost everything, it seems like it's a gray area. Like that line seems to be a blurred zone. If you understand what I'm saying and you dig it, please like and share. Feel free to comment below, and I will check you all in the next one. Have a good one. Later.